This video is not about running. It's about this hat. Except it's not really about this hat either. It's about saying thank you. About a month before the Rotterdam Marathon, I got an email out of the blue that said, "Hello, my name is Mick, I'm in Tasmania and I'd like to send you something." And it had come at a time when I had got a lot of spam emails in relation to the YouTube channel, and I nearly fell for a couple of them, but managed not to at the last minute. So I just wasn't sure if somebody out of the blue wants your address, wants to send you something. But it came with a LinkedIn. The email had a LinkedIn name, and it was a guy called Mick in Tasmania. So I thought, well, I better I'll check this out. So I contacted him and said, it was him. So I said, sure. I didn't know what he was sending. I didn't ask any questions. I'm kind of open like that. And this video is not about getting people to send me stuff. That's not what I'm making this video for, and I really don't want anyone to send me something. But nonetheless, this package was on its way, and it was at a time when there was a couple of other things. When you're YouTubing and reviewing things, you get a lot of kind of stuff. And I got a note from the post office saying something had arrived. I didn't know what I was going down for, but I went down to pick up this package after what was easily the worst week of work I'd had in a very, very long time. I was at a low ebb. It was the end of the week and I was really not feeling good. I wandered down to get this package. I signed for the package. I wasn't sure whether this was something that I was reviewing or what. But anyway, this package said, on it, it said cap. And I thought, oh, it's a cap. And it was fairly lightweight. So I kind of thought, well, maybe somebody sent me a cap saying, I love Tasmania or something like that. I didn't know what it was. And it was a very windy day, so I couldn't wait till I got home. I walked home in a high wind and I opened the package. And to my astonishment was a cap that I had been looking for, but presumed it didn't exist or couldn't be bought. And I had checked, it's an on-running cap in a particular color, the orange, it's called orange, it looks sort of reddy orange. And somebody Mick had seen my video and decided to send it to me. Now to say it made my day is an understatement, but for a couple of other reasons, the cap was really special to me. It had come on quite the journey, designed in Zurich, a city that's really special to me, made in China. I just met my Chinese friends for the first time in 4 years in Belgium. And then it went to Tasmania, somewhere I've always thought of Tasmania as a lucky place, which I'm going to get to. And then it got sent to me in Ireland. So yeah, the cap had quite the journey. So I put the cap on my head and I got thinking, a thinking cap as it were, or I sometimes call it hat, sometimes call it a cap, but I put it on my head and it made me think of making this video. I have never been to Tasmania, but I've always thought of it as bringing me luck. In the mid-1980s, I was an architecture student in Dublin in Ireland, and I went to Australia to, I'd seen the work of an architect called Darryl Jackson, and I liked it in some magazines. I wrote off to Darryl, said, could I come work? I got a note. I said I was coming to Australia. That was the big thing. I was coming to Australia anyway, and they said, come see us when you get here. So I went to see them. I got employed. I had a fantastic summer. And I decided that I wanted to travel around the centre of Australia. I ultimately wanted to see a building by Glenmurcutt in Kempsey in New South Wales. And so I decided to travel around the middle of Australia. And I suppose I was more adventurous then than I would be now. You're young, I suppose, I don't know, my 20s? No, early 20s. And I spent the summer growing a really unattractive beard, hair down to here, that kind of stuff. And you do on your way, getting even more freckled and big red nose in the sun. And anyway, I headed off to the centre of Australia. I took an overland train overnight from Melbourne. I was working in Melbourne to Adelaide, and then I went up on the GAN, which is a train up to Alice Springs. Beautiful. The train still runs. I recommend it to anyone. One of the best things I've ever done in my life. I've done a lot of things. And I went up to Alice Springs, and then I went down to see some buildings by Philip Cox in Ulara. And to get to Ulara, which is near Ayers Rock or Uluru, to get there, I went on a bus. And in the bus, there was just loads of people like me. I mean, young backpacker types. And I learned nothing. I mean, I learned about some stuff, and it was fun, and they were all really great. But there was something itching at me. So the following day I got up and I decided I'd start hitchhiking. Now, I'd been warned. I'd been warned in Melbourne not to hitchhike in Queensland, or as they like to say, Queensland. They somehow liked to point out that Queenslanders were not as modern as people in Melbourne. So they said, don't hitchhike in Queensland. Nobody mentioned the Northern Territory. So I thought, I'm in the Northern Territories. And I started hitchhiking. And the first thing I got into a bus, a school bus with kids going to an Aboriginal school. And it was just wonderful. Me, the driver, and lots of Aboriginal school children. It was really special. I really was special. And it was very intimate and very... it was great, and I got dropped off at some turn near the Olgas, which is a series of stunning rocks in that part of the world. And I went through those for the day, hiking through the day. And then I got out on a dirt road, and I'll show pictures along the way from Apple Maps of the various things. I don't have my own pictures here with me, but I'll have some Apple Maps pictures. And I was out on a dirt road. I thought I'd better hitchhike back, and a Toyota Land Cruiser stopped, and it was being driven by an 11-year-old. And his dad was teaching him to drive. His mom was in the back seat. I got on the back. And then the mother said, did she mind? And the kid, and she's breastfeeding. I mean, it's amazing to be masked. But you're suddenly in this amazingly intimate setting with the kid learning to drive, the mother with the little kid. And it really was fantastic. And so they drove me back to Ulara. And the following day, I decided I'd get up and I'd hitchhike back to Alice Springs. So I went back to Alice Springs. I stood up outside the road. The guy stopped in a very nice Holden Statesman and picked me, and there was another tourist up. All he said to me was, did I smell? What an unusual question. I didn't look that great, I have to say, but I didn't think I smelled. But anyway, we got into the car. He drove me all the way to Alice Springs. It turned out he was a chauffeur for Japanese tourists, and what he wanted to do was to ensure that I didn't ruin his car, which made a lot of sense. We got up to Alice Springs. There was no room in the youth hostel, but I stayed there anyway. I slept on the floor. That was fine. I was existing on $20 a day. And the following day, I decided, I don't know why I decided this, but I decided I'd hitchhike to Mount Isa, which is about 1,200 kilometers away. In Australia, you tend, not always, but you tend to get long lifts. So, it didn't seem that odd to me. I had a little, Greyhound. I had a little Greyhound map of Australia. It's pre-internet, all that sort of stuff. With the Greyhound buses, and I could see that I needed to go. So the road sort of goes up through the middle of Australia, and it would go north to Darwin from Alice Springs. And then I was going up to a place called Three Ways, where you could go north to Darwin, South to Adelaide, or you could go across to the east to Townsville. And I thought, well, I'll go up there, and then I'll go across to Mount Isa. And that was my plan. And so I got a lift with a guy. I'm not sure if his name was Pat. His surname was definitely Rowan. He was in another Toyota Land Cruiser, but it wasn't going particularly fast. And when you're trying to get a long way, this happened regularly in Australia when I was hitchhiking, you kind of think, gosh, I wish we were going a bit quicker. But he was fantastically interesting, told me all about snakes. I remember I learned everything about Australian snakes from this guy. Maybe it was Pat. Anyway, Mr. Rowan. And it was great. It was really, really enjoyable. And as we went, we were going to a place called Tennant Creek, which is about 500 k's away. And as we sort of went, we saw very little cars. You hear that the outback is remote and not particularly well traveled. It's only when you get there that and I'd done a lot of traveling, I've been all over the place, because we lived abroad as kids, and so but yeah, this is the outback of Australia. Is it's as empty as it gets. And so I was, we drove, saw very little traffic on the way. And so we got to Tennant Creek, I don't know, and is heading towards midday. And I decided, right, Three Ways was at this stage about 28k, something like that, not far, 20 miles, 30k, something like that, north. And then I was going to try and go across the desert. And I thought, I was very naive. In hindsight, I looked at this little map, and Three Ways looked like a big town. I mean, all the towns look big. Three Ways is a gas station. I'll show a picture from Apple Maps looking down. It's a gas station. It's nothing more than a gas station. But I stood at the side of the road, hitchhiking. I'd hitchhiked all around Ireland. It's always nerve-wracking, but I'm open to new experiences. more so when I was younger. And standing out by the side of the road, and next thing a mini moke stops, which is a small little open platform car based on a mini, a small open car, 2 guys in the front. I said, are you going to 3-ways? They said, get in. I got in. I get in the back, and immediately I realized as we take off, they're drinking. So I'm thinking, oh, this is not a good sign. These 2 guys are drinking. And so they're drinking as we're going along, having a couple of tinnies, and we see a car coming on the other side, and they drive over on the other side of the road. Car goes off into the dirt. And I'm thinking, oh, gee, what, this was not a good idea. Anyway, we go along, and I think, well, they're going to go to 3-ways, and then I'll be out, and something else will come along, and it'll be fine. And in that part of Australia, the roads are really straight. It's 2-lane blacktop, but really straight, see a long way, and it's very, very desolate. Again, I'll show images. And I'm getting to where I think I must be near 3-ways. And next thing, we pull off the road, and I find myself in an abattoir. So I'm at this series of sheds by the side of the road, and it's an abattoir. And I'm thinking, And there's a sort of mobile home and a sort of small little temporary sort of home with a fly screen out the front, and another car outside, another blue Holden of some description. And we stop and we get out, and they say, oh, I said, well, I thought we were going to 3-ways. And they go, well, our mate is having a shower. He's going to 3-ways, and he'll bring you. Come inside. So I'm nervous, and I go inside, and there's a fly screen. And I sit down. I have a camera bag. I kept the camera bag on me, and I'm nervous. And the first question I get asked, so we sit down, and they say, "So what's Canada like?" And I said, "Oh, I don't know. I've never been to Canada." Now, a lot of people I get mistaken for, even in Ireland, I get mistaken for because I've lived abroad, and my accent isn't always as Irish as it might be, and something. Oh, it's Canada like. Anyway, and I've never been to Canada. So say I've never been to Canada, and then they say. Any Aborigines in Canada? And I'm thinking to myself, I've just told them I've never been to Canada. So I've never been to Canada, I don't know, I wouldn't know. So nothing much seems to be happening, and I don't see any guy coming out to the shower or wherever to get in a car to take me to 3-ways. And I hear the sound of some sort of helicopter kind of thing. It sounds like a sort of Robinson or 22 or one of those, a small light helicopter. And I'm clearly puzzled by this, and the guy says, "Oh, we're rounding up some horses. We're going to shoot them this afternoon." Well, the French, they'd eat anything. And I'm thinking to myself as a bit of boeuf de cheval on the Champs-Élysées. And so this is not. I'm at this stage. I'm getting even more nervous. And I'm sort of, again, no sign of anybody coming. I'm thinking this was really not a good move, so I'm sitting there, and they're making, none of the conversation is making any sense whatsoever, and they're drinking away. And then they say, have a beer. And I say, oh, no, thanks. I don't want to dehydrate. Have a beer. Okay, I'll have a beer. So I don't know, 4X, Foster's, whatever. Anyway, so I have a tin of beer, sitting there thinking, what? Anyway, so I'm there. And then I hear another car pull in, and they say, our manager's here. And I'm thinking, manager, suit, tie, briefcase, responsibility. Guy comes in wearing a t-shirt, and his opening remark is, "G'day mate, show us your nipples." So the tension is ratcheting up. So I'm there, and he sits down, and he puts his elbow on the table, and you can see he's got a big gash in his elbow. It's like it's all matted, dried blood. And you try not to look at it, you try not to notice it, and but you're sitting there. And one of the guys says, "See his arm?" And I go, "Oh, yeah." He says, "Killed 4 of our mates in an accident last week." So I'm thinking, right, time to go. So I get up, and I say, "Well, I got to go now. I'm going outside, and I got to get to 3-ways. It's a long day, and blah 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 blah." And they go, and the manager goes, "No point getting out there, mate. Look at the road. There's no traffic." And he was right. Look at the sun, it's straight up, you'll burn up. I said, well, I hear what you're saying, I thought that's, but I'm gonna go outside. So I go outside, and I stand, and I can see a long way that way, and I can see a long way that way, and straight ahead of me, I'm looking at the abattoir. But I'm standing there with rucksack, and next thing I see this car coming along. It's a Nissan or Datsun pickup truck with a sort of camper van on the top, and I'd seen it earlier. It had Tasmanian plates, and I had everything for spotting number plates and things like that. So I'd seen it earlier, and I wondered about it coming across from Hobart or wherever onto the mainland of Australia, Tasmania's land, and travelling along to the centre. And it was going so slowly earlier on. I thought, there'll be a couple of old people. They're never going to stop. There's a couple of old, you turn into the old person. But they stopped, and the relief. I can't explain how relieved I was. I didn't know what was going to happen if I didn't get a lift. Whether those guys were just play acting, but they were drunk. They had knives and guns, and you just never know. And so I was so relieved. I was even more relieved when I saw it was a couple. I mean, because you're always thinking, when you're hitchhiking, I had a frying pan into the fire kind of thing. But it's a couple, and I'm thinking, well, it's unlikely that a couple are going to stop and do away with me. So, but you never know. And I got into the car, and it turned out to be a young couple from the west of Ireland, from Connemara, who were on their honeymoon. I can't explain it. The relief was just amazing. And I travelled with them. We went to Mount Isa, all the way across through the night, and in fact, in this little camper van, me and this Irish couple. And then we stopped in a town called Camberwell, which was before Mount Isa, a small number of people. I was trying to get by on $20 a day, so I couldn't afford the youth hostel. I went to the campsite, so I went to sleep. I remember looking at a shower tray, thinking, I'll sleep here in the toilets. And then the husband came out to get me. I had visions of, I'd go out to sleep in this shower tray or whatever. And I could imagine the wife saying, you better go out and get Barry and bring him back. And him thinking, I'm on my honeymoon and I got to get this other Irish dude. Anyway, they did. And but I don't know their names. They just, they were so kind. They brought me the following day. I slept in the camper van, and then the following day they dropped me in Mount Isa. And it was just so nice. And I've told many people this story in Ireland. Ireland's a small place. You assume eventually someone will know. But I've always associated Tasmania with good luck, particularly because of the plates on this car. And then out of the blue comes a hat. And so out of the blue comes this hat all the way from Tasmania. And it was funny because it arrived just before the Rotterdam Marathon. And I had already chosen all my kit for the Rotterdam Marathon. I had my orange watch strap. I had a bit of orange on my Vaporfly shoes. I had my Soar running top, which had arrived, which is this year's one. And not only did I want this hat for a very long period of time, but it perfectly matched my kit. And so I knew it was a lucky omen. Now, I don't believe too much in lucky omens, but the fact that it came from Tasmania, that somebody thought about that kind of thing, meant I thought, well, look, I better make a video to say thank you. I put the cap on my head, and as I ran the Rotterdam Marathon, I thought of all of the people that I need to say thank you for. And it was kind of emotional, I won't lie. It was kind of emotional, but I ran well, and I thought of all the people, including you, Mick, as I was running along. About kilometre 4 was when I started thinking about the hat, and then I sort of started thinking about other things. And then I'm a big fan of the book, Haruki Murakami's book, What I Talk About When I Talk About Running. And kind of what I think about when I think about running. And I just thought of all the people who'd been so helpful. I thought of obviously the people who'd picked me up back in Australia. I thought of Mick sending me the hat. I thought of all of the volunteers at the race who'd given up their time to make it special for all of us. And of course, I thought of all the people who watched these videos who propelled me forward. So, thank you.